Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this, the first in a series of autumn webinars organised by IFA Farm Family. The theme of this evening's webinar is crime prevention. We've been working in IFA for quite a period of time with Garda Síochána in the prevention of crime and in community policing. And this webinar has been brought about so that you can have access to a lot of the information that is available, because it's very important now that the dark evenings are coming in, the clock is going back and winter is coming, and we know that crime rises at this time of the year. And so it's very important that we look after ourselves, we look after our families, we look after our farms, and we look after our communities. And our guest speakers tonight are very well versed in all this area. They have a lot of experience in helping people in the prevention of crime. So we're hoping that the tips that they will give you tonight will help you to prevent yourself and all those, your loved ones around you in your farm in the coming winter season. And of course, all year round as well. A little bit of housekeeping I think I need to do first, because a number of things will happen as we go through this webinar tonight. The first thing is the webinar is being recorded, and we will be putting it up on our website, the IFA website, in the next couple of weeks. So it will be there for people to view who are unfortunately unable to log in tonight for whatever reason, because we believe the tips are so important that they should be available to everybody. The second point I would like you just to take on board is that there will be a question and answer section at the end. So there's no point in putting up hands during the actual presentation, but just make a note of who you wanted to direct your question to. And as we come to the end, I will just indicate to you that, put up the hands at that stage, press the little button that's has a hand on your screen. And once you touch that, we'll see that you have your hand up, and we will bring you in, and you just state when you come in who you want to direct your question to, or maybe you just want to direct it to the panel in general. The last thing I would like to point out to you is that we have a couple of nice prizes to give people at the end of the night. We're like the Late Late Show. We don't have one for everybody in the audience, but we do have a nice little prize at the end, sponsored kindly by FBD. And for those who are logged in tonight, will have the opportunity of winning that, and we will call out the winners at the end. We will have a little draw from all the names of all the people who are listed on our screen. So thank you very much for joining us. We're absolutely delighted to have you with us. We hope you will find this whole presentation very beneficial. The three guest speakers we have with us tonight are very well known. The first speaker we will have will be Barry Carey, who is IFA Crime Prevention Officer, and Barry will share a lot of very valuable information with you. The second speaker will be Sergeant Graham Kavanagh, who is the Crime Prevention Officer in the Laois Offaly division, and again, from practical experience, Graham can give you a lot of practical guidelines. And finally, we have Fred Flynn, who is a branch manager with FBD, because we all know, unfortunately, sometimes when things go wrong, we do need to have the insurance involved, and he will tell you about what insurance maybe you should have, and maybe how to make claims or whatever in the event, unfortunately, if you do have an issue. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join with us tonight as we begin our webinar on crime prevention. So I would kindly invite Barry Carey, IFA Crime Prevention Officer, to speak to us. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Chair Alice, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending. This evening, I'm going to cover just a few particular points, and one in particular is that what we're doing in IFA as a national organisation in relation to crime prevention. Can we go up one, please? Thank you. In relation to tackling of rural crime, what we have done as a national organisation, we've made submissions on a regular basis, taking it from the membership as to what the issues were in relation to the policing authority. We made submissions to the Commission on the Future of Policing, the Garda inspectors. We've written very recently to the Minister for Justice, to the Garda Commissioner. We've had several meetings. We've appeared in front of the Oireachtas Committee on Justice and Equality. We've had public meetings like tonight all over the country in relation to county executives. We've had media campaigns in relation to stay safe and secure. We have in certain areas Garda liaison groups, which I will explain to you at a later stage. In relation to organisation, development and capacity improvement within Garda Síochána, we have made several recommendations, and particularly in relation to confronting of crime. Next, please. Just the current trends of what's going on in relation to rural crime. Opportunistic. This is people who just drive past, see something, see an opportunity, whether it's gates on motorways, whether it's open gates in relation to our doors or into barns and fund, etc. We've organised crime groups, which is a much bigger issue across Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, and including Ireland in relation to bigger particular groups. We have regularly at this time of year bogus traders and callers, and that's in relation to people who arrive into the elderly, targeting members of our elderly members of our communities, offering services, bogus services, and making particular spurious allegations in relation to what they're capable of doing. The thefts at this moment in time in relation to all sorts of issues going to from home heating oils, diesel, fuels, fertilizers. Farm vehicles are a huge issue at the moment in relation to specific vehicles of an age. Thefts of tools, machinery from sheds and barns. Thefts of trailers, tractors and quad bikes. Those three particular items, trailers, tractors and quad bikes, are the most popular in relation to the thefts. Livestock of sheep and cattle are big at the moment. And then there's the misuse of drones that fly in over properties, drones that fly in over cattle and sheep, and the misunderstanding as to what they're about. There are certain legitimate organizations that actually use drones. For example, ESB networks. You have certain military organizations and members of the security service that use drones for legitimate purposes, and they don't need permission to fly over properties. However, there are those that do. The other biggest one at this moment in time around the country are lurchers, illegal hunting and trespass, and this has caused huge issues around the country. Very recently, we had a farmer outside of Cashel and badly beaten on a Friday night, broken ribs, facial lacerations, concussion, right beside his home farm because he found people that were lamping and hunting late at night. And this is a huge issue all over the country. I've been at many JPCs, that's the Joint Policing Committees. I've been at executive meetings around the country, and I'm attending 4 in the coming week. And the last one is dog attacks on sheep and cattle. Every year we have the same particular program in relation to stopping dogs coming onto lands and people coming onto lands. So this is going to be addressed in a particular way, and we've made representation through the Minister's office in relation to these. Next, please, Adele.
Should be changed there, Barry?
Next, please.
Yeah, that should be there now, Barry.
Okay, here we go. In relation to combating crime, we have a number of particular schemes that we have in operation. One of them is property marking. And property marking, every Garda division in the country has a warehouse full of property that cannot be returned to its rightful owners because it hasn't been properly identified. And there's a scheme which has been launched by Property Marking Ireland in conjunction with the Department of Justice called Property Marking Ireland. And at the same time, the Garda Síochána announced the Garda Property app. If you go onto the Garda website and look at Garda Property apps, you'll see this particular one. And what it does is it shows you how to photograph and record all of the details of your specific property. And then in the unfortunate event that you have a loss due to theft, you have a great chance of recovering it. There are community schemes all over the country in relation to this by the county councils and public bodies that they've actually purchased a property marking machine. And this puts in your air code on various types of properties and that. And this what will do, there are 3 things in relation to property marking. One, it acts as a great deterrent, particularly at community schemes where you have county council signage in communities which say, this is a property marking area. And the second thing is then, if you do become the victim and of a theft, that the chances of recovery are greater. And the third thing is then, if people are caught in possession of your property, the chances of a good conviction are great. The next point is alarms. IFA has, as part of some of our partnership schemes with Phone Watch, home and farm alarm schemes, and these are a great deterrent. Again, the next point is vehicle and asset tracking. In IFA Williams and Westwood Trailers, they have a database of 5,000 stolen trailers over the last number of years. 5,000 stolen trailers, right? So for something as small as 60 or 80 euros to be able to asset track, and this is a huge piece in relation to crime prevention. Also, supporting the community CCTV schemes. This is now part of the rural safety plan, which the minister announced back in September. And again, this needs community involvement. Also, another piece too is signage and notices, which state private lands, no dogs, and that. And one of the biggest things is reporting suspicious activity. Everyone knows their local Gardaí and their local Garda station. However, in agreement with the Gardaí over the last number of years, encouraging everybody who sees something suspicious to report it to either 999 or 112. 112 is something that's there in relation to if you're out of sequence, okay, if you're out of coverage. But 999 112. And the next thing, as far as community engagement comes, reporting of crime. We have some people, I didn't report it because for whatever reason. Can we go back one, Adele, please?
Sorry, Barry, there's just a bit of a delay on the changing, but it is sharing at the moment.
Sorry, we've just gone forward one.
Which sign are you on here?
Can we go back one slide, please?
Combating rural crime?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's a delay on one of our sides. It is sharing. It's just going to take a few seconds to come in. Sorry. Reporting suspicious activities while it's on at the moment.
I have with me action in the event of encountering trespassers. I can see that. It was just the one before that, please, if we can get it.
Just while we're waiting for that to come up, Barry, can you just give us any idea where we can find some of these machines that you were talking about that identify, that we can put on our use to identify our vehicles or whatever? Where can we look for to find some of these?
Every county council, thanks Adele, every county council has a scheme going where the JPCs have recommended the purchasing of a property marking machine. There are two types available, but there are schemes which are for free, and what they have taken up is the local county council has bought and makes available then to it. There's also under the training schemes by various groups, training members of the farming communities. Hello?
Yes, you're okay, keep going.
Tommy, can you mute your please? Thanks. The county councils have made available machinery, property marking machines, and through the scheme, the Minister for Justice has just announced 500,000 euros to Property Marking Ireland over the next 3 years. So machinery will even be more increased within it. An application can be made through the rural funds inside the county councils to get a property marking machine, and this will take it forward in relation to getting schemes going within communities where maybe on a Saturday or Sunday at a GAA club or wherever at a mart, and they can actually mark private items, household items, and farm machinery and property and tools. And again, this is by putting air codes on them in a number of areas covertly. But again, with the Garda app, it is then the Garda property app. You record all of these items so you can actually show ownership at a later stage. I went down through all of these signage and notices of private lands, no dogs, those type of things are very important. But reporting of suspicious activity to 999-112 is absolutely critical, because under-reporting of crime is a huge issue at the best of times. And if you don't report a crime, even if it's something minor, it doesn't show on statistics. Therefore, it doesn't become any issue in relation to when the superintendent, the chief superintendent at the end of the year is looking to say, well, what happened in my area, and it doesn't appear out there. Thanks, Adele, please.
Is that showing up there now, Barry? Sorry, I'm sharing it on my side.
Okay. One of the items that I mentioned is trespass and issues that are huge over the country at this moment in time, and that is where people arrive onto lands, farms, and that with dogs hunting, particularly at weekends and particularly at night time. And then we're saying action in the event of encountering trespassers. This is just a brief guideline at this moment in time. 1, ask them to leave the property and advise them of the danger to livestock and animal worrying. Okay, particularly at this time of year where we have lamb and calf. And then the second one is, don't engage with banter or foul language. Do not react to threats or intimidation, which is a common occurrence right across the board. 3, reporting to the Garda Síochána 999-112, and I repeat again, not your local Garda station. If you have an air code for the specific area that you're in, a road number in brackets now 999 of the R999 or 257, whatever it is, the local district or a landmark to give specific instructions to Gardaí who will come to investigate. If you can, note the registration numbers of vehicles and the number of trespassers and the description if possible. You may at times record this on a phone if it's safe to do so. However, there have been a number of issues recently. One specific one is, as I mentioned earlier, outside of Clonmel, where a farmer was badly beaten, right? And that resulted in 600 people meeting at a community meeting the following week. There's also been meetings in Meath, Louth, Monaghan, Galway. Tomorrow I'm in Limerick on exactly the same issues as to what can be done by IFA in relation to supporting our members in relation to this. Next one, please, Adele. And I apologise to everybody. I should be able to put this up myself, but for some reason it
should be sharing there, Barry.
My laptop is not in. Okay, and community engagement, and what the communities can do together. Reporting of crime, right? You know, reporting of a crime, as I mentioned in the last piece, is hugely important. And people have an apprehension about 999 or 112. 999, everyone thinks that it's supposed to be, you know, a murder style situation to dial 912. 999 is just call centre. Would you like ambulance, fire brigade or Gardaí? And you report a suspicious activity or a particular activity. And in that, you're supporting your local Gardaí, right? And you take that away from them, because the local Garda station might be very small manned. You know, they may not have the resources because they could be involved in a local particular incident. So what we have in the communities are eyes and ears groups. Nobody knows better than what we know within our communities. And we see things that others don't do. Very successfully, IFA has set up WhatsApp groups, and through the text alert and Crime Stoppers, making a report. Again, I stress 999 or 112, not your local Garda station. What happens there is it goes into a central reporting sequence in command and control, and the nearest car is sent to the particular location. what this does then, it's a reduction in crime. Okay, it leads to arrest, fines, and convictions, and continuing projects for 2021 within IFA, and one of them in particular is the Farm Crime Survey of 2022. This is done with IFA in conjunction with the Technological University in Dublin, right? And it's part of an international survey on farm crime. If we don't have our say in this, and I'm encouraging everybody tonight, if we do not have our say in this, and if we do not get a sufficient amount of people to engage in it, we will not have a voice when it comes to reporting this to the Minister and taking it forward as a major piece. We're hopeful at the end of the year to have the final piece to say in this. I have two particular points that I haven't put up on screen tonight, which I want to mention, and that I mentioned to Alice earlier. One is online fraud, and one in particular is huge at this moment in time. Everybody's very wary about giving away details over the line and over the net, but one in particular is romance fraud. I've mentioned this at public meetings, and you kind of get people sniggering and laughing. And however, it's a very serious offence. And what it has done to members of the community who are lonely and looking for partnerships get caught out with these particular things. In fact, the Garda Economic Crime Unit has reported almost 800,000 euros taken from unsuspected males and females in rural Ireland, members of our communities who have engaged with people and got caught out. So again, it's something that's badly reported because people are embarrassed to say about it. And the other point I didn't put up on screen, which I want you to take note of, is in particular drugs in our communities with members of our homes and families, and the types of intimidation and threats and all that go with it, and big debts and bills that are being run up by families and paid by families. If there is an issue, and if you feel that you need to come forward and help, we can provide that through our Crime Prevention Office, confidentially and quietly. So I say those two things, that if people are embarrassed about romance fraud, if people are concerned and afraid in relation to drug debts, the Office of the Crime Prevention is there to assist in this. Next slide, please.
We're nearly there, Barry.
That's it. Thanks for listening, and I hope that was of some assistance.
Barry, thank you very much. Barry has given us a good bit to think about there, and a lot of it is about the policy we have within IFA of how to who we're engaging with and how we're hoping to bring this forward. And a lot of work will be done going forward, has been done and will be done going forward with the policing authority to try to improve things. And as Barry said, it's very important that we fill in that survey, which is available to us all to fill in, and it's on all our websites, to take it down and fill it in, because it will give us a voice going forward with the Minister when we're looking for extra helps and extra provisions, particularly in the Garda provision area, to help with the prevention of crime. I would now like to introduce Graham Kavanagh. Graham, who I introduced you already, is involved in crime prevention in the Laois Offaly area and has lots of practical experience for us. I will share it with us now. Graham, you're very welcome.
You're
muted, Graham. Just unmute yourself. Just unmute yourself, Graham.
Now, can you see that slide?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see now, so just bear with me. So I always hate coming on after Barry, whether it's in person or doing this, because he steals my clothing. But anyway, joke. It's always good to do this, because the advice that Barry's given is coming from a perspective where he's representing the IFA and the farming community. And as crime prevention officers, we're seeing stuff day to day that, and I've been very careful with this, it's nobody's fault that these crimes commit, only the criminal. The criminal comes and chooses to make us victims. And in the theory side of stuff, for a crime to take place, there has to be three ingredients: a location, a victim, and the individual. If you can remove one of them from it, you don't have a crime. So a lot of the stuff we see rurally, and I'm working in a rural area, is stuff that if we change habits, it'll greatly reduce something happening. So people assume when they listen to us talking that it's going to cost them money. They have to spend money to do things, to stop things happening. And yes, occasionally there are scenarios where we'd recommend spending money, which will greatly reduce a crime taking place. But it's the habit changes, the simple things that we do can cost nothing, that can greatly reduce that for us. So I'm changing this. So I'm talking about burglaries in general. So burglary, whether it's domestic dwelling, buildings in general, so sheds, it includes sheds around the farm. So Operation Thor started in 2015, and that was a response to really high crime figures, particularly with domestic burglary and in the winter time. And since that started in 2015, we've seen a 37% reduction in it. Our burglaries in the, I'm trying to avoid mentioning the C word, over the previous 2 years, they did greatly reduce. We still had plenty of them, but the one thing that caused them to reduce was that we were all at home. We were nearly all at home, and occupancy is a great deterrent. Making the place look as occupied or being occupied, it's a great deterrent in itself. I've seen the CCTV footage of homes being targeted by the organised gangs or even the opportunistic criminals. And if they cop to somebody in a house or in the yard, they generally hightail it out of there, or they make some excuse to be there, but they generally don't want to be around if somebody's at home. We do have the crimes at this time of year where we're away from the yard or away from the home. And Alice was right when she said earlier, wintertime is generally a period where we see an increase in them, and it's because of darkness that they rely on. So this time of year, most of our burglary activity occurs between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. Now, sometimes it's very hard to put a time on a crime, because a person could leave the home at 7 or 8 in the morning or earlier and go to work and arrive home at 7 or 8 in the evening and find that the home was being broken into, and there's no alarm in place and there's no way of indicating when they entered the property unless a neighbour or something saw something. So that's the whole thing Barry was mentioning earlier about reporting suspicious activity. It's really important. If it's innocent, that's no problem. The guards are not going to criticise that. We'd rather get out and check something out than have to investigate it afterwards, if that makes sense. So typically in your domestic burglary, it's the usual suspects. It's cash, jewelry, stuff that's easily transferable or broken down, and then tools and electronics. Electronics less so, because they're probably a lot more easily identifiable. Phones can be stunned or killed. I watched stuff over Twitter there at the weekend where people noticing phones they'd stolen in Ireland turning up in different parts of Asia where they've been broken down, but the phone was still active and they were still able to track them to another country. So the technology is there for doing that, and it's definitely there for us to track if it's in Ireland. We did a number of videos over the 2 years where locate my phone or find my phone on the Apple and the Android phones, and it's not exact because the GPS technology is never going to be exact, but it'll give you a good indication of where the phone is. Tools are always something that's targeted, whether it's out of vans or whether it's out of garages and sheds. Again, we speak about property marking and the property app, and I'll just talk about them in a few minutes. But every piece of equipment or something we buy for the home has a serial number on it, and nobody ever takes a note of that, and then it disappears, and all you're telling us is that it's an LG or whatever it is type of television, and we don't know the model. Serial numbers are a great way. Now they can remove the stickers. They can try and remove property marking if we put them on items, but the removal of it in itself, the party that's caught with the property has a case to explain where they came into the property. It's a sort of a little quirk in the theft and the handling and stolen property, that they have to show where they got the property from rather than us trying to prove. So if we have a suspicion that's stolen, they have a case to answer. But if property is marked, it greatly reduces its value, and it's less inviting for a person to steal and less inviting for somebody to buy. The property app is new. If any of you are bored tonight, Crime Call is on. I shouldn't be saying that. But the Garda property app is being discussed on it and how it works. It's a lovely little piece of software on a smartphone. You're able to put all the valuable property on it, and it's like the old inventory we'd ask people to put on. I've used it for a few items that I have in the garage. Serial numbers, pictures, any unique marks on it. And the reason why we do this is that if it is taken, you actually have pictures of it now, and you have the ability on the app to be able to email it to the guard that's dealing with the case. And Barry mentioned earlier about marking property with air code. That's a personal choice. We would generally, the air code is a great thing because the air code is unique to your property. it can be anything that's unique to you. But the air code has its benefits, that if my colleagues are out patrolling and they stop a vehicle at 3 o'clock in the morning on a winter's night and they find, say, a quad in the back of it, and they find the air code on the quad, they can know straight away where that came from, because they can find the air code on the phone. This is the property it came from. And you're able to get the property back to the owner quickly. And the individuals in the van are spending the next few days in the Garda station being interviewed and charged, instead of us spending an inordinate amount of time trying to identify the owners of property. And these individuals are awaiting us to establish where the property came from to be able to get an owner for it, if that makes sense. Sorry. Now, this is a real bone of contention with people because of the energy crisis, and I've had a few discussions about this. The lockup light-up was a piece that we used over the last number of years. Most burglars are opportunists. They don't want to be seen. They'll target easier properties. Now, I would argue the point with anybody that lighting is more expensive than running any other piece of equipment around your home. Lighting works. And I would encourage people to continue using lighting as one of the measures to make your property less inviting, whether it's the farmyard or whether it's around the home. I bought simple little light bulbs that have a sensor in them that if somebody walks into a room, the light comes on, stays on for 15 seconds, it goes off, if that's what you wanted. LED bulbs, very energy efficient to run. LED lights outside, very energy efficient to run. Probably a lot cheaper than to run the dishwasher or the tumble dryer or the washing machine. I know we have to use them too. I'll share this PowerPoint at the end of it. There's videos there that we've done with Crime Call about home security. And there's loads of smart technology out there that you can use to, I suppose, make your property less risky or less inviting to a criminal. And I'd advise using them. Always encourage locking doors. You wouldn't believe it's nearly 25% of our domestic burglaries properties are left unsecured. A criminal walks up, tries to handle and walks in. Windows left unsecured. Alarms in place but not used or not serviced because of the fault with them. Get somebody to come out and service your alarm. They can even do that remotely with modern alarms. They don't need to come out. They can service the alarm remotely. And the lighting is a huge thing. Lighting inside and outside the house. The bogus callers, that used to be a seasonal thing. It's year round now, all year round. Individuals calling to the home, telling you that you need something done. Something needs fixing. You know yourself what needs to be done around the home. You don't need some chancer calling, driving into your property and telling you that this needs to be done or that needs to be done. And I'd always ask people to ask family or friends or somebody local trade to do that. We have local volunteer services re-established over the last number of years. There's always going to be contact somebody local to do this work for you. I know a lot of the time the reason why it happens is that people are, maybe they don't have that contact in their community, or maybe they're just not patient to wait for somebody to actually do it, a family member to do it. So somebody just happens to arrive, takes the opportunity and does the work and charges them an inordinate amount of money. One of the big scams we had over the last 12 months, we had individuals calling around the homes, and they were particularly preying on older people, saying that they were members of Garda Síochána, generally saying detectives, and they were wearing masks. We couldn't get them to wear the mask when they were supposed to wear the mask, but they were wearing the face masks to do this, and they were identifying themselves and then saying, oh, we're investigating counterfeit €50 notes. And inevitably the person will produce the €50 notes that possibly they were after collecting on pension day or savings, and the guards say, yeah, they're all counterfeit, and they'd be gone with the money. And unfortunately, sometimes we'd see large sums of money. I believe my colleagues apprehended a number of them individuals and they're before the courts, and funnily enough, they've suddenly stopped. So we'll see how that progresses. But one of the things, and it's very hard to try and change the mindset, is getting people not to answer the door, because we're welcoming, we're Irish. Somebody rings the doorbell, we'll answer the door, and we generally don't check to see who's outside. I'd always ask, have a look out the window. If you have cameras around the property, look at the cameras to see outside. But have a look. If you don't know who they are, you really need to answer that door. If you're unsure, ring a family member, a neighbour, but just don't let them in. If you are going to engage, make sure the back door is locked. Use the door chain if you have it. And the senior alerts alarms, huge tool. I've seen this around the country, that a crime will occur and it puts an unbelievable level of fear into the community. And suddenly, from speaking to the installers that install the senior alerts, there's a massive demand for the use of them, and people will get them and then they stop wearing them or stop using them. the pendant or the wristwatch that you wear them. And if you have a family member that has them, encourage them to use it, you know. And the one thing I've learned, there's no point trying to get somebody to wear it because it might actually stop a crime, but it'll work for them if they have a fall or if they're stuck somewhere and they need help. That's where it works, and that's how you encourage people to use it. It does have its crime prevention, or I suppose its use in the criminal side of stuff, but it's trying to get people to wear them and test them and use them. So can't get that message strong enough through to people to use them when they have them. I don't want to bore people with the theory side of stuff. So preventing criminality, really important thing. We don't tackle the crime. We need your support to be able to do that. No better organisation than the IFA to hold us to account when we need to. But don't forget, at the end of the day, we live in your communities too, and whether it's the IFA or community alerts or whatever means, working together is the best way of tackling these individuals. There's 10 principles of crime prevention, and one of them there is removing the means of the payoff. So simple things, and these are things I'm seeing happening. So it doesn't cost anything to take the keys out of a Jeep or a car that's in the yard that you're leaving in the yard overnight. Because what I do occasionally see is the vehicles with the keys left in them being taken with maybe a trailer that's in the yard, drive on into the area, steal other bits of property in the area, and suddenly we may have 5 or 6 yards that have been targeted overnight where, yes, they might have used their own vehicle, but they've used a vehicle that you've, I suppose, unintentionally provided them by leaving the keys in them. So just taking the keys out of them. I know from dealing with these, with quad bikes particularly, and they are a high value item. They cost a good bit of money to buy. Generally, when somebody buys a quad, they will hang on to that till it can't be used anymore. It's driven into the ground. And GPS tracking is very cost effective now and very, very effective. And there is a gentleman up the north of the country that has a quad lock that you can drive a quad into that'll ground anchor to the ground. If you're spending 5 or 6, or I've seen quads worth 20 grand, if you're buying something like that and you're spending that sort of money on it, you need to consider the GPS tracking or ground anchoring to the ground when it's not in use, instead of leaving it out in the yard or leaving it that it's unsecured in a shed. Keep them out of sight, taking photos of them and marking them with, I say, a code unique to you, but typically your air code is a good example, and securing them properly. Trailers, again, we had theft stop a number of years ago, where it's whatever type of property marking the trailers effectively. I see plenty of pictures internally where we're investigating crimes and we're trying to identify them, and it's just like any other trailer. There's nothing unique in that trailer that stands out, that identifies it to me if I'm patrolling the area. Hey, that's the one I saw there in the bulletin there last week. So it's something, it's making your property less inviting to somebody else to steal. And I suppose your people are there listening and should, yeah, that makes sense. And we don't need to be told that, but a lot of the criminal activity we see, it's because of, I suppose, how can I put it? We've got relaxed in an environment and we probably have never been a victim of crime, and suddenly they come and visit. And the first thing people revert to is that they think they have to spend loads of money to do something, when it's a simple change of habit that'll make the place less inviting to you. And if you embrace that part, you might actually start to spend money on doing other things. But it's making your place, like we speak about locking gates and closed shackle locks. Yeah, that works. That's one layer. And I know I can rock into one of the shops and buy a battery operated angle grinder. That makes noise in a very remote location. Nobody will hear that. But if they get through the gate, what are they going to target? So if I can increase the amount of time that they have to be on my property to take that property, it increases the chance they're going to be seen or heard, and it increase the chance that you can see something, report it to us, and we can get out and respond to it. Unfortunately, we're really bad in ways of letting the public know when we have these successes and when we catch these individuals, and sometimes that's for operational reasons. But we do have success week on week. I know from looking at the media channels or at the internal channels that we have, that my colleagues are out morning, noon and night. They're catching individuals involved in criminal activity 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. They might catch them with something small, but it's getting a charge sheet against them and it's getting them before the courts, and it might stop them from coming back into an area again because they've seen that I came into that area and we were caught. There's other areas you can go to. Other things that we can do, the rule setting. So setting up community alerts. Text alert schemes, it can be hit and miss in certain Garda divisions, but they work if they're used effectively, getting information out. Information that's not going to frighten people, but letting people know, well, actually, there was some activity around the area there, maybe yesterday evening or the day before or this morning. And at least when you get that message, it heightens your alert that you're watching out for stuff. If you're watching out, the criminal sees you're watching out. Again, they'll move on. Increase the chances of being caught. So that's down to making the place less inviting, lighting it up, making it more secure, the GPS tracking, making it identifiable, easy to track. And I know these things work because I remember a number of years ago, there was a number of quads stolen and they were recovered in the Kildare division in a shed because one owner had put a GPS tracker on the quad, and we recovered 5 quads off the back of it because one person had taken that small bit of an initiative. One thing we say, and I know this in reality, there's a large swathe of crime that goes unreported, whether it's in a rural or an urban area, for whatever reasons. Barry alluded to it earlier. People need to report crime. You need to report the activity because you get the service that the area demands. So if criminal activity is high, that's where the policing will be targeted. If the areas are quiet, then it's going to be the activity that's in the busy area that we're going to target. So it's really important that people report that anything that goes on. Important thing, like, and I know, like, I get this and I speak to people, you know, and they say, I don't see the guards out on the beat anymore, they're not patrolling. And I notice the massive exercise to try and change this, but there still is that attachment between ourselves and our communities. Barry alluded to it earlier as well. Like, there is a difference between reporting something to a guard that lives in the area or ringing 999. The guard that lives in the area is not always working, where the 999 service is always available. So it's important. 999 service gets a response, it's logged, it's recorded. So it's important that people use that service and report anything, any concerns you have, any information you have. Barry spoke about the drugs issue earlier. Every Garda division has an inspector that's assigned about drugs, that intimidation. I've been into the homes of families that have been intimidated because a son or daughter or a family member has got involved in drugs and owes money. And there's nothing more heartbreaking seeing a mother or father desolate because the son or daughter owes huge amount of money and they can't see a way out. But there is support there with ourselves, and there is support network for families that have been through that. So it's important you're not on your own with that, you know, to report it. And I know because I kind of use the social media myself, there's so much information out there from ourselves online, on social media, but don't be afraid to talk to us. You know, call into the station. If you see one of us on the beat, stop, talk. If you want to talk to your local crime prevention officer, we're probably one of the few people in the organisation that's easily found online or by ringing a Garda station and identifiable, and we'd love to talk to you. If we can help, we will. But there is that line, and people get annoyed when I say it. Crime prevention is everybody's business, and we all need to work together on it. And one last thing, Barry spoke about it earlier with the issue with lurches. I see that myself. I'm at this 5 years. I've been in the Guards 27.5 years. Every year it raises its head. There is a piece of work going on in the background with the IFA and ourselves to try, I suppose, an education piece and an enforcement piece to try and tackle this, you know. But none of us want this, you know, and there is that, I suppose, fear out there that these individuals are coming onto the property and casing it out. But the one thing I always say to people, and there's that fear as well that drones are being used. I can look at Google Maps and see what a property looks in the air, or I can drive into an open yard because the gates are left open and have a look around and have some excuse for being there that I'm selling you something. And that's traditionally how they're seeing stuff, you know. Sometimes they're getting information locally as well, you know. So there's simple things we can do, but I also am cognizant the level of fear out there. Sometimes it's real. I know it's real, but sometimes it's, I suppose, not justified because we see and we hear about these really horrific crimes. But I know my own chief constantly alludes to it. We live in a good, safe society. When we hear about these really heinous crimes, they frighten all of us and we take action. And I've been into them halls at these community alert meetings or any sort of meeting, and you'd be lucky on a winter's night if you had 15 in it. But if something happened in an area, by God, you'll fill that hall, you know. And it'd be love to be a situation that you fill that hall every time you have a meeting, and you don't need something to happen to get people into a room. So I'm going to stay quiet now. I don't need Alice to tell me to stop. I'm going to hand back over.
Well done, Graham. Thanks very much. I think two things that I just took personally from what Graham said there is the use of the property app and then the property marking. But particularly, we will try our best to get you finished tonight, that you will be in time to log into Crime Call, where you can look at that property app and maybe see it in more detail and see the uses of it. And thank you also, Graham, for mentioning about people and their personal safety in the houses, because we know last year, particularly along the western seaboard in particular, but not also in our own areas at this side of the country too, we've had a lot of property break-ins and older people under threat. Is there anything in particular, Graham, you would just say particularly to older people, other than wearing just the safety band to the local community alert? Is there any other piece of advice you could give to us, maybe to relate to for ourselves, but also to relate to maybe elderly people living on their own?
Yeah, like I'm conscious, Alice, there's that fear, you know, and if you're living alone or you're living with somebody out in a rural location, the one thing we as an organization need to do is to reach out a lot better. And we probably got really good at that over the pandemic, and so did local groups. But the important thing for people to realize, you're not alone. Sometimes it needs you to pick the phone up and look for that help. So don't be afraid to ring the local Garda station or the district headquarters. Your local Garda station might be closed and the nearest could be 40 kilometers away. But ring and say, listen, is there any chance somebody can call out to me? I just want to have a chat. And the community policing teams or a crime prevention officer or the patrol car are more than happy to do that. You know, that's the important thing, that people realise you don't need to be a victim for the guards to call out to you.
Very good. Yeah, great. So they could come out and talk personally to people. If they're a little bit concerned or a little bit worried about their house not being safe or whatever, they should call out the local community policing officer to have a chat with them.
Exactly, yeah.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Graham. We will get back to people for questions at the end of the next session. And if you also want to write a question in the chat box, if you're used to using the chat box, we'd be happy to take that on board as well. We now come to the last part of our presentation, and I would like to welcome Fred Flynn, who is a branch manager with FBD. Prevention is better than cure, as we know from our two previous speakers. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have to deal with the mess afterwards, but also I'm sure insurance will tell us how we can provide to have proper insurance cover in the event of us having a problem. Fred, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Alice. Just to check, can everybody, you can see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Brilliant. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
So thanks, Chair Alice, and thanks to the IFA for inviting me along. What I was going to do was just run through a few slides with a focus on some of the covers available and some items to consider to ensure you're protected in the event, or hopefully it'll never happen, but in the event of a claim or a loss. Okay, so see if we can move it along. Okay. So first and foremost, if we look at the house and contents, so generally speaking, theft cover is automatically covered when you insure your house and contents. It comes as standard under a comprehensive policy. One of the things to be aware of, if there's a change to the occupancy of the house, so if it becomes unoccupied, or even if it's maybe going to be over a number of weeks and months unoccupied during one period of insurance over the year, it could reduce the cover to fire, lightning and explosion only. So obviously then theft isn't covered, so if there's a break-in you won't be covered. So it's just to be aware of the occupancy clause. Also, domestic garages, offices are automatically deemed to be part of the house and contents. So if there was a break-in into the garage and we'd say there was domestic items stolen, they're automatically picked up under the house and contents. They also will usually, most insurers will have a single article limit or value. So generally speaking, well, I know with FBD, ours is 5% of the contents sums insured. So if, for argument's sake, you had a very valuable item in the house and you hadn't declared it, the max that the insurance company will pay is up to 5% of the sums insured on your contents. So you could run a little bit short there. The policies can be set up, and in the main they are set up on a reinstatement basis. So that's to put you back into the same position you were prior to the loss. But there is policies out there that can be set up on a first loss basis, which basically means the first so much is covered. So maybe the first 50,000 or the first 70,000 or the first indeed 10,000 is covered. But anything above and over that, you'll be looking after it yourself. So it's just important, I suppose, to make sure that whatever policy you have, that it suits your needs. So if it's a reinstatement, good and well, but a first loss, you have that option as well. The contents under the house policy, once the contents are in the house, they're covered for theft. But there's a number of items that they aren't covered for. So loss of an item wouldn't be covered under the standard household policy, or indeed theft of an item while you're maybe on holidays. So if you had maybe expensive jewellery or laptop computer with you and it was stolen while you're in the States, it's not going to be automatically covered under the house and contents policy. So sometimes people will specify these under an all-risk policy. Again, we'd see all risk very popular with students going to college because I suppose if they drop the laptop, it's covered, but also if it's stolen at college or indeed from the apartment, it's covered as well. The average clause, the next slide is kind of devoted to the average clause because it's so important, but it runs through basically everything. So it'll run through house and contents, livestock, theft of tools, all of these sort of different sections that you can opt for on your insurance policy. So we'll get into the average clause and give you a couple of examples in the next slide. The excess under the FED policy under the house and contents is €200. So again, that's the first amount you're responsible for in the event of a claim. Different insurers will have different excesses on their policies. So again, it's just to be aware of that. Theft of property in the open. So our policy automatically includes it up to a limit of €650 with the house and contents policy, but it's within the house, it's the boundaries of the house. So if it's in the front garden or the front lawn, it'll be covered, or the back lawn, it's covered. But if it was down the yard in a shed, that won't cover it. So it's immediately around the house. As the chaps mentioned earlier on, trailers and implements, you can cover these. You can cover your tractor and then put on a trailed implement. The same with a Jeep. You add your trailer onto the tractor Jeep policy or indeed onto the farm policy. It's so important there, as the previous speakers said, that we do have ID and also the market value of the trailer. We recently had a claim there where a guy had a trailer insured for €2,000, and he had it insured for €2,000 for probably the last maybe 6 or 7 years, but it was stolen on him. It turned out the trailer was worth €4,000. So straight away he was looking at only getting half the market value of it. So it's so important that the value is. Okay, so move on to livestock then. So theft of livestock is available as an extension to the fire, lightning and cover on livestock and can be included also on our combined livestock policy. The excess is €500 each and every claim. So what that basically means is it's not 500 per animal. If you had 10 animals stolen and the claim was €10,000, you'll be responsible for 500. We pay the €9,500. And the maximum value any one item is €6,500. Moving on to tools and diesel. So these are done on a first loss basis. So under the tools, we have a first loss option of €5,000 or €10,000. And for diesel, it's a first loss of €1,500 or €3,000. Now they are subject to security features. So just in relation to the tools, the farm tools must be located within an outbuilding consisting of a disc padlock door of solid timber or steel material at the entry point at the time of the theft. And the guards must be given immediate notice within 24 hours of any incident of theft and provided with a list of all items stolen. And then the maximum value any one item is €2,000, and there's no excess on that. Tractors, quads, again, as you probably are well aware, you can cover them for your basic third party, but then you have your third party fire and theft and comprehensive. And as Graham said earlier on, quads and trailers are the high target stuff, and it's really important to have them covered, and it's not that awfully expensive to cover them. Okay, so just to touch on the average clause for a couple of minutes. So as I said earlier on, this runs through all of insurance policies, insurance contracts. So underinsurance occurs where you insure your building and or contents for less than the amount it will cost to rebuild your building or replace your contents. If you're underinsured, the condition of average may apply in the event of a claim. This means that we may only pay a portion of any claim if you have underinsured your building and or contents. So just to give you a couple of examples. So Mary insures her home with a building sums insured of 200,000. A fire happens and causes 100,000 worth of damage. Upon investigation, it becomes apparent that Mary has underinsured the property and the correct rebuild cost is 400,000. The condition of average is applied to the fire claim as follows. So the sums insured of 200,000 is divided by the rebuild cost of 400,000, and that then is multiplied by the loss of 100,000. Which will give you 50,000. So in this scenario, we would pay 50% of any loss or damage. In this case, the maximum claim paid for the damage is 50,000 euro. As the full potential cost of making good the property is actually 100,000, this would mean that any costs over the 50,000 are not funded. Mary would have to pay the remaining costs herself. And then the condition of average, if there's a total loss, so if a total loss occurred and Mary's home burned down entirely, the condition of average would be applied as followed. So again, the sums insured of 200,000 divided by the rebuild cost of 400,000 multiply the loss of 400,000 is 200,000, or indeed the max that she has the property insured for. So as I say, that runs through everything. So even if there was a theft of contents and you had underinsured your contents, and for argument's sake there was 5,000 worth of content stolen, you had insured your contents for 10,000, but the actual value of your contents was 40,000. You're only going to end up with 2,500 euro because there's a quarter. You've only insured it for a quarter of the correct sums insured. The opposite is also true as well. There's no point over insuring. So it's important to get the right sums insured when you're taking out your insurance policy. So how do you avoid underinsurance? Regularly review your property sums insured to ensure your current rebuild costs are at the right level. Do not rely on index linking or inflation protection if applied to your policy to keep your sums insured at the correct level. And you can get expert advice to determine the rebuilding cost of your property via the Society of Chartered Surveyors or the scsi.ie. They have a ready reckoner calculator, and there's different areas of the country covered. And you basically put in the square feet or the square meters of your property, and it'll calculate a rebuild. And then FBD, we recently launched an initiative to allow up to €50 discount of home, farm and business policies where premium increase as a result of increased property sums insured. So this initiative was launched to encourage customers to increase their sums insured in order to protect them against underinsurance and the rising cost of construction. So the next two slides are basically just on liability, and the reason I've included them, it's so important because if there's a loss in the liability section, there's potential for a very significant loss. So I suppose it's key that every farmer business person should have the liabilities covered. So to run through them very quickly with you. Public liability. So the company will indemnify the insured in respect of all sums for which the insured shall become legally liable to pay in respect of accidental bodily injury to any person or accidental loss of or damage to material property happening during the period of insurance within the Republic of Ireland and arising out of and in the course of the business. In respect of any one event, the total amount payable should not exceed the limit of indemnity shown in the schedule or any lesser limits shown in the section against a specific extension or exclusion. And where the company is liable to indemnify more than one person, the total amount of indemnity shall not exceed the limit of indemnity shown in the schedule. So our standard limit of indemnity for public liability is 6.5 million, products liability is 2.6 million. One of the most important things that you should be aware of there is the liabilities always follow the declared occupation. So if you're a farmer and your policy says farmer only, that's fine. Your public and employer's liability will cover your exposure or your negligence as a farmer. But if you're a farmer and maybe an agricultural contractor as well, but you haven't declared agricultural contracting, there's a possibility there you will not get paid for something that happens from the agricultural contracting risk. So it's very important that the occupation is accurate. So just to give a couple of examples for public liability. So the policyholder's cattle escape out onto a public road and are in collision with a passing vehicle, resulting in third-party personal injuries and third-party property damage. Another one would be silage contractor is mowing in the policyholder's field and sustains damage to the bed of the mower after contact with a fence post not removed by the policyholder. Insured is involved in the showing of pedigree cattle at an agricultural show. There's an incident at the show where a third party is claiming the insured's cow kicked her and the insured is deemed negligent. And what wouldn't be covered, so policyholder's direct employee is injured in the course of their employment on the farm, or indeed if the policyholder causes third-party property damage cutting down a tree on a commercial basis and not in connection with his own farm use or her own farm use. The employer's liability, so this focuses obviously in on employees. So the company will indemnify the insured in respect of all sums for which the insured shall become legally liable to pay in respect of bodily injury to an employee not being a member of the insured's family, caused during the period of insurance while employed in the Republic of Ireland and arising out of and in the course of his or her employment by the insured, again in the business. And then inclusion of family members, the company will indemnify the insured in respect of liability as described in the cover heading in the section for bodily injury to members of the insured's family over the age of 14 in the insured's employment. So God forbid if there's somebody younger than 14 and they're helping out or get injured on the farm, they're not going to be covered. So again, just a couple of examples of what's covered. So insured asks a neighbour to help him round up cattle as he needs help for a TB test. Neighbour knocked down by the insured heifer and is injured. Farmer's daughter is attacked whilst working on the farm by a cow after calving and suffers injury to their rib. And what wouldn't be covered, insured is engaged in the provision of sale preparation for third-party horse breeders and holds an occupation of farmer only for the purpose of this insurance. Okay, so just if, God forbid, you're unfortunate enough to have an incident or a claim, so on discovery of any circumstances or event which may give rise to a claim under this policy, the insured must, 1, notify the company immediately, either in writing or by telephone. If the insured is not involved personally in an event, the insured must advise the company within 48 hours of becoming aware of such an event, providing all the details the insured is aware of or has obtained, and report to the guards or other policing authorities in the jurisdiction where the insured damage occurred within 24 hours any loss or damage connected to a claim for theft, attempted theft, or any other malicious and deliberate act. So finally, just to mention, as IFA members, there is an €85 voucher that can be used against any of your FPD policies, and there's also a family membership voucher worth €75. So thanks a million for listening, and thanks for having me on the event this evening.
You're just on mute there.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you very much, Fred, for that. A lot there to absorb, and I think probably one of the great main messages you have given us there, that it's very, very important every year that we look at our policy rather than just automatically sign up for it, and we check that we're up to date on the valuations of everything we have. And would you suggest, Fred, that it's a good idea that maybe we would invite our local rep out to chat to us about our policy before we renew it every year, or at least every second year?
Yeah, it's a very good idea, Alice. Every few years every year to touch base with your office, but field calls are a great option too, because when we're out, we might spot something or maybe spot a gap in cover. So definitely, yeah, it's well worth a farm visit, and just to go through, I suppose, everything on site.
Great, lovely. Well, look, that's absolutely fantastic.